is Mono Stereo Video, a podcast about movie music. I'm a songwriter, producer, DJ, and I love movies, and this is the perfect excuse for me to talk about music and movies. My co-host today is my perpetual co-host.
Your question?
Casey Goins. I just want to address that Casey, although she may not be on every episode, she is the co-host and an integral part of this podcast. Without her, this podcast wouldn't exist.
Oh,
Yeah,
fancy.
I know. How are you doing, my love? I already asked you. This is we're restarting, re-recording the intro. It's a behind the scenes look, but how are you feeling?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Last time we were on here, we spoke about the soundtrack to the movie for Natural Born Killers, the Oliver Stone film, Trent Reznor produced soundtrack. What'd you think about that last time?
That one was fun. That one was a fun one.
We had a fun time, and we are continuing on our little excursion into Trent Reznor land. And we're continuing that today with the soundtrack for the movie Lost Highway.
Mm-hmm.
Trent Reznor, at this stage in his career, had just finished Natural Born Killers. He got a lot of praise for that. That movie was kind of a hit. It was kind of a thing, and it became a cult hit more as time went on. His soundtrack being a part of that. He went on tour for the Downward Spiral, long-ass tour.
That would have been so cool.
Right?
I wish I was old enough to have gone.
Well, he did. He opened up for David Bowie.
Ugh.
Like, David Bowie did a whole, it's a whole thing, and he opened up for him. So
That would have been awesome.
that would have been awesome to do, and that would have been awesome to see.
Mm-hmm.
As well, he produced 3 Marilyn Manson albums in that time period, like
Okay.
up until Antichrist Superstar. So that's what all was happening. That's what all was happening for Trent Reznor. Subsequently, had a little bit of a substance problem, had a little bit of a drug abuse problem, and was going through it a little bit. Can't knock him for it, I mean,
No.
busy guy. They were a bit of a comfort thing and a bit of an escape, so that's what he chose to do. It was a period of 1994 to 1990, 3 years, 3 years in which this all went down. So that's a lot of stuff to 3
Yeah.
Marilyn Manson albums. That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy. That's a lot. And I was reading also that their relationship was strained somewhat after the fact. This is the stuff that they worked on mostly in New Orleans. So
Okay.
So during this time, Trent would have been kind of more stationed in New Orleans. He did get a call from a friend or something like that. Like a friend relayed his information to David Lynch, who was looking to get music going for his latest film that he was working on. So it was a whole friend relationship thing. Like Trent Reznor knew somebody who knew somebody who knew David Lynch. And David Lynch ended up reaching out to Trent Reznor. Trent Reznor has said in interviews that he's been a big fan of David Lynch. He said that there were some instances in which they would delay starting the show because they were catching up on Twin Peaks episodes or rewatching Blue Velvet or something like that. David Lynch met up with Trent Reznor in New Orleans. They had a discussion, and David Lynch showed him a rough cut of the film, and he liked it. He liked it without all the music and all the sounds and stuff like that. I believe part of the reason why Trent Reznor was a fan of David Lynch was because of his sound work and stuff that he did, like in Eraserhead. If you know anything about like Eraserhead and David Lynch movies, there is like an industrial sound kind of in the background, just kind of haunting
Right?
everything.
Like a Racerhead had a lot of like, it just sounded like constant like wind rushing or like the
Mm-hmm.
sound of like a turbine or something in the background
Mm-hmm.
constantly.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
The sound of something moving, the sound of pipes jiggling, or things like that, which will come into play a little bit later as we're discussing this stuff. But anyway, it was an influence on Trent Reznor, and if you listen to like the Downward Spiral itself, like it does have there's different sounds in it.
Yeah, lots of texture for sure.
There's a lot of texture.
Mm-hmm.
The songs kind of weave in and out between like funky new, like industrial type stuff, and like just kind of more chilled out, laid back. I
Yeah,
guess
that
more
the
sparse.
album's like I mean, it's a spiral. Like it takes you like there's like high moments, fast, 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 and then it slows, and then it speeds up again. Like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it is like a spiral.
I
That's
mean,
crazy.
that's the movie feels like that too.
The movie does feel like that.
Mm-hmm.
The movie does feel like that. Let's see. So, they met up in New Orleans. There was a whole little story that Trent Reznor said in an interview that David Lynch was like, all right, now I need something that sounds like this. Okay, for this scene, I need something that sounds like this.
That's
And he was
cool.
kind of pretty direct about it.
Yeah.
And Trent Reznor wasn't really jiving with that. He just kind of
Oh.
yeah, he's known for being that kind of person in the studio, kind of like me a little bit, where he has to be alone. He's got to kind of be alone with his thoughts, sit with it for a bit, which I believe kind of like they were on board with. They really wanted to work with each other, and they gave him the space, luckily, to do his work, which is totally cool. I mean, by this point, Trent Reznor and Nine Inch Nails went from like cool stuff that only like your cool goth cousins would wear and their shirts and stuff. I mean, they got pretty mainstream. As heavy as they were like the heavy mainstream band with that Downward Spiral.
Mm-hmm.
So Trent Reznor had a lot of cachet with what he was doing, and Natural Born Killers kind of like leveled that up a bit. So he was working with like auteur directors, things like that. I read somewhere, and I mean this kind of comes later on, but the director of the video for Closer, Mark Romanek, directed 1 Hour Photo.
Oh, okay.
And originally Trent Reznor was gonna do the music for 1 Hour Photo. And I gotta look into it again. Once we get to the Social Network, I'll read up on it a little bit more. But I believe there might be some work, or maybe I think some of the work ended up being on the Social Network. I gotta read into it a little bit more.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I see.
So
yeah, I remember that movie 1 Hour Photo. It was like, dang, Robin Williams.
yeah, that one was pretty
Yeah, it's
hardcore.
pretty-
I remember.
You haven't seen it? Watch that movie. It's a really good movie. It's not a typical role that Robin Williams would play, but it's a really good movie.
I remember we tried to watch it, you and I think we did watch it once before, you and I, or no, wait, have we watched
I mean,
it?
I've seen it. I saw it when
I've
it
seen it a
was
lot.
on video on VHS.
Yeah.
We rented it. I remember renting it when I was younger, but I think we did watch it. I remember watching
I
it.
remember watching it with you.
We watched it.
Okay, we did. We watched it all the way through, because I remember it took us a while to start and stop it, because it is one of those like uncomfortable movies.
Yeah, oh, for sure.
Very uncomfortable movie. Much like Lost Highway, it kind of makes you uneasy. Much like just David Lynch movies. Now, David Lynch started off. He was a kid in Spokane, Washington. I believe we just saw a documentary about it. Grew up Spokane, Washington. Had some siblings. Kind of a normal childhood. He was an arty kind of kid. Went to art school. He was a painter. Started filming himself making kind of live paintings, which ended up being his first short films, many of which are available online or on like Criterion DVDs, things like that. I believe like his short films have a whole collection unto themselves.
Oh, okay, that's cool.
Or they may also be collected with different like different Criterion films. Like maybe
Mm-hmm.
Lost Highway has some or something like that. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know. I
Sure.
don't know. We'll find out during Christmas when I get the Lost Highway Blu-ray from
Oh,
Casey.
mm-hmm. Merry Christmas.
Okay. But so he went from that, I believe, was Blue Velvet his first film? It's Eraserhead, actually. Both of us just mentioned it, and we totally
Mm-hmm.
forgot it at this moment. But he talks, in that documentary, he does a stroll with some of the actors from Eraserhead in the little compound
Mm-hmm.
that they filmed Eraserhead in. And he talks to like Jack Nance, who Jack Nance actually shows up in Lost Highway as well. But they kind of just like explore and like revisit that whole little area because they worked on Eraserhead for like 5 fucking years.
Yeah, when they said that, I was like, that's crazy. Like, you wouldn't think that that would take that long to make, but I mean, they were doing everything so, like, in between, like, other stuff. Like, they were all busy. Like,
His ex-wife is in the film, and she was talking about how one week he'd end up painting one room black because they needed it for this, and so he was very dedicated to his art.
mm-hmm.
He considered it an art. There are articles in which he does kind of talk about it. There's one instance in which Trent Reznor mentioned that he was talking to him, and David Lynch did bring up people like, he was like, oh, Steven Spielberg, like he understands why Steven Spielberg makes those blockbuster movies. There's
Mm-hmm.
still the way that Steven Spielberg can convey his artistic expression, and it just so happens that his artistic expression jives with the populace
Mm-hmm.
or the mainstream.
Mm-hmm.
And David Lynch is very aware of that, and he's very content with where he is in like cinema and like
Mm-hmm.
art film, because when you think of art film, it's like art film 101. It's like David Lynch and Eraserhead.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you think of, and he knows that. So he's very aware of that, and he mentioned it. And whereas he said something like where Spielberg could be comfortable making like something and grossing like over 100 million, he's fine grossing like $7 or $8 million. So
Yeah.
very, very, very compelling guy, very interesting guy. His visions express somewhat of the darkness underneath Americana, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because he's very, like, to see him, like, he's a very unassuming guy, but he's just not what you expect. Like, once you hear him speak or just, like, his mannerisms and stuff, like,
Mm-hmm.
he's not what you would expect. And I feel like that's what all his movies are like, too. Like, they're just, you go in thinking one thing and then it's just not what you're expecting ever.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Yeah. And he knows that, and he plays off of it. He's a very textured guy, which I believe, I think Trent Reznor and him have a lot in common in that, and the artistic nature of what they do, even down to like the album art of like Nine Inch Nails and such
Mm-hmm.
like that, where it's like there are textures. There's like hairs, there's
Mm-hmm.
spirals. It's on like, it's not like on a flat surface. There's flat surface. There's jagged things here and there. Very much like David Lynch paintings.
Mm-hmm.
In the movie they show him collecting flies. Like, remember there was like
Oh, in the documentary, yeah,
yeah, in that
they,
document. Oh yeah, the documentary.
yeah, he was collecting because he wanted to stick them and like what else? He was collecting other stuff
Yeah, other
too.
little bugs, other little all sorts of
Um,
chingas.
yeah, they kept one of his bags at the luggage at the airport once, and he they said that nobody could find it, and then they finally find his bag, and they just like rang his doorbell and ran off because
Yep.
they were scared of what was
Very,
inside.
very scared of the man. So I mean, he is a peculiar guy, but people rave about him. People say they love being on his movies. And then in the footage itself, and there's a lot of footage that I was watching on YouTube. Like he's a very like approachable dude, and he's always really real like excited. It's something It says something
Like
about
eager.
somebody.
He's like
Yeah,
eager. Yeah, not excited, but yeah, he's eager to
yeah,
do the job.
and like he's very crazy. He knows how to get it. It seems as though he knows how to get stuff out of people, not by just like telling them what to do, by just kind of sliding it in there, like being like, "Oh man, that's cool," this like finessing it. He knows how to finesse his way, and he seems real approachable in that. So I don't know. I like that. I like that. Pretty cool guy. See him on TBS's American Dad as or was it no, it was the Cleveland show. He was on the Cleveland show and he was the bartender on the Cleveland show.
That's funny.
It was so weird.
I never watched the Cleveland show.
You didn't miss anything. You didn't miss anything. We're not going to do a soundtrack episode on the fucking Cleveland show, so you don't got to worry about that at all. Lost Highway, 1997's Lost Highway. Let's get into it. Trent and him collide. Trent Reznor does somewhat the same thing for this soundtrack in that it's a bit like he helps with the sound design. He helps co-write some of the songs. He's in there with the composer. He does some other songs with other like collaborators and stuff, which I'll mention as we go through the soundtrack. But he also kind of just pastes it together. The soundtrack itself follows the flow of the movie essentially. It's a pretty direct thing, much like the Natural Born Killers. But I think this is like the more heightened version of what Natural Born Killers was doing. I think this is the more like prestige-y version of it. So, Lost Highway is like a neo-noir nightmare that crosses boundaries and plays with time and space while cementing Lynch's unique style into the canon of the 90s. I wrote that. That's what I wrote there. I did that.
Wow.
1997 movie. It's described on like within the description as like a Mobius strip of a story. So it's like one story that becomes another story, but then becomes that same story again, but then kind of just eats in on itself. A little bit of a snake eating its own tail, an Ouroboros. It's about this Fred Madison. Starts off with Fred Madison, who is a Los Angeles saxophonist. I was going to say saxophonist. A Los Angeles saxophonist who receives a message on his house intercom that says, Dick Laurent is dead.
And it's played by Bill Pullman.
What's the weirdest thing or like the weirdest call you've ever picked up, or the weirdest thing you've ever heard on a phone, or like has anybody ever said anything weird on a phone to you when they've called you like by accident or anything?
I mean, I've had like weird. I don't answer the phone. Like I've had weird voicemails where it's like somebody like it seems like they might have butt dialed, but then like they're having a whole ass conversation with another person. And you hear a lot of wrestling, and then sometimes there's alarming words in between, but it doesn't make any sense. So I kind of just have to delete it and forget about it. But yeah, I don't ever answer the phone. So
I remember one time, I don't know whose phone it was. This is back in my drunk days, like my early 20s, maybe, yeah, early 20s, drunk days, my old best friend. So on my phone, it was on one of our phones. I believe it might have been my phone. There were a couple of messages, and I remember I don't know who this is. Let me check who this message is from. And it was like, hey, échale, órale, rooster, hey, rooster, hey, shh, rooster. And then he hung up. Called back, hey, rooster, ¿qué onda, rooster, qué onda, rooster. And I don't know why, but after that, I started calling my best friend Rooster. Like, that's who he was on my phone.
Oh my gosh.
So it was Rooster for that. I do that. I put people on, like, I have you as Gooseberry. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're Gooseberry. He was Rooster. Who else has a peculiar one? My friend Amy she's Sparky because her I believe her grandfather, she was telling me, like when he was older, he would call her the dog's name, Sparky. So I just called her. So I just put her as Sparky on my phone.
Really?
Let's get back to this movie. So that's the setup of the film. it's a neo noir. It's very stylized. It's a horror film. Like
Mm-hmm.
when I saw the trailer, I didn't know what the fuck it was. I
When I saw
remember.
the movie, I didn't know what the fuck. Like the first time I watched it, I was like, "What did I just see? Like what?" Like I couldn't even like make a synopsis out of what I watched. I had to
Hmm.
like, but I did know that I wanted to see it again.
Yeah.
Like I knew I loved it, and I had to see it again. Like I wanted to understand.
So when did you see the movie for the first time?
For the first time, I believe I saw it when I was in high school. No, no, well, yeah. But I don't think I saw it like when it came out. I didn't see it in the movie theater. It was like later after it was out on VHS. And I believe it was probably our friend Renee that had showed it to me. Um and I think that's how I had found out about it. A lot
Okay.
of cool movies was because of her.
Okay. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't see it until like my probably my 20s, like probably later on when I had my own streaming and it was just on one of them. It was on one of oh, you know what? I never saw this and I saw that it was scary. I remember I had started getting into David Lynch. The only one that I really watched of his before was Blue Velvet.
Mm-hmm.
Like I had seen parts of Dune, I had seen pieces of Eraserhead, but I saw Blue Velvet over first before everything. Then I saw his short films, and but anyway, like this one, I think Jake saw it, my older brother. I think he saw it when we were younger, and he was
Mm-hmm.
saying it was scary, and I think that's what kind of scared me too.
Okay.
And I remember like Robert Blake's face in the trailer, but I remember also at the time there was like a record label called Lost Highway,
Mm-hmm.
and I think like at the time I was like, wait, is this like the record label? Like, is I had those weird, like, you know, those kid
Yeah.
associations when you're like, you can't tell the difference
Yeah.
between two things. But yeah, when I saw it the first time, I was like, this is badass. But I had
Yeah.
no idea. I didn't know what I just
Yeah,
saw.
I couldn't, like, if somebody were to ask me, like, what is it about? It was just like, I don't know. Like, you have to watch it. And then it's like, I've seen it so many times, and every time I watch it, like, I feel like I understand a little bit more, or I make a new interpretation of whatever
Mm-hmm.
I originally thought, or I just notice things. That's why I love watching,
Mm-hmm.
rewatching.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, every time there's always something else where it's like, oh,
The story ramps up when
his
his
wife.
wife, Renee, played by Patricia. So first off, Fred Madison, played by Bill Pullman. Patricia Arquette plays Renee Madison. I'll go on with who else she plays in the film, but the film, the whole, it starts ramping up when she steps outside and she finds an envelope at her doorstep, and in that big envelope is a VHS tape. They both watch the VHS tape, and it's just a zoom or like somebody filming from the outside of their house, and it's creepy. It's got that whole old school VHS feel. So even that, like, there's that layer of like, this is film and this is like well lit and well designed and everybody's well manicured and the props and everything's built by hand by David Lynch himself. And then there's the texture of like the VHS film within that, which is super cool,
Mm-hmm.
which
All
is super.
grainy.
Even like with the sound too, there's that dog barking at at the beginning there's like that whole the fucking like the phone is ringing. Like I
Mm-hmm.
feel like that's something that filmmakers, indie filmmakers, artsy filmmakers, and David Lynch maybe started that, but I think he uses the phone ringing to kind of start off and make like a tense, you know, because the phone's just ringing and you're just
Mm-hmm.
like, fuck, like that's fucking annoying. Somebody has to answer that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he kind of builds up the tension with that. The dog barking, there's like a consistent dog barking when she gets the fucking envelope. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's also like a weird tension building moment and
Mm-hmm.
such. But then, you know, everything kind of goes off after that. The film spirals into madness and just a lot of dark with a lot of light. It's very pretty.
Oh yeah, a lot of the like props to the hairdressers and the makeup people, the costumes and stuff. Like everybody, like I mean, you can tell when somebody has a bad wig on. Like that'll throw. Like to me, that's the most distracting thing. Like I can't concentrate on anything that's happening because I'm just looking at how horrible the wig is. And on this one, it's like obviously you can tell it's not her hair, but it's still like it looks really good. It's styled really nice. Like um they did her makeup really well. Like everybody just looks like really cool in the movie. Like
That's another thing. That's a very David Lynch thing. Like the coolness. It is a very cool
like
movie.
everybody's real glamorous.
Yeah.
Like very glamorous and manicured and like everything's very picked. Like you know what I mean? Like
it's a noir in that also it looks like a noir. Like you're saying, everybody's manicured. Everybody, like his hair is very slicked back.
she's always wearing like a robe and high heels.
Her hair's
and
always
her hair's
done.
always in every place. Even when there's a scene where she's in the restroom washing her face, getting ready for bed, and it's like she splashes water on her face, but it's still like her face full, like a full face on, like it doesn't budge.
Yeah.
So I always like that, like.
Yeah, very noir. It starts. The film starts off with a whole Los Angeles trilogy, which we won't get into today. But I mean, I don't know if there's like another window to talk about David Lynch. There's a lot to talk about with David Lynch, and there's a lot to explore with that. I guess that's why I was excited about this episode, to kind of be able to discuss that. Let's go into the cast. The cast list here. We already said Bill Pullman, Fred Madison. Bill Pullman, famous as the president from Independence Day, who delivers that line. Today we celebrate our Independence Day.
I was gonna mention him from Spaceballs.
Oh, and Spaceballs. Okay. And he's also, what's that detective show that we like to watch? He's the Sinner.
Oh yeah, he's the detective on The Sinner.
He's the
lots
Sinner.
of problems.
He's got lots of problems.
Lots of issues.
And he always talks like this. That's Bill Pullman. We love him. Did great in this movie. Very, very disheveled person. He's always on the edge on this one. So very, very nervous.
Always brooding.
Always brooding. Very nervous. Very slick. Jazz musician. Patricia Arquette plays Renee Madison / Alice Wakefield. One and the same person? Two different people? What's happening here?
Right? You decide.
I guess it could be the same person or two different people, which I guess is part of like the Mobius strip of this movie. But Patricia Arquette, awesome. You know her. You love her. Have we talked about her before on this show? Would we have talked about her before?
Yet, I don't think. Or maybe might have mentioned her just because we've seen so many things. I don't know. We haven't done we need to do the Stigmata soundtrack too.
Oh, okay. That'd be cool.
Yeah.
Patricia Arquette, very awesome. She's having kind of a resurgence right now too. She's in a lot of TV.
Yeah.
She was in Severance. She was in that one about the Munchausen syndrome lady.
Oh yeah, Mother, or what was it?
Mommy Dead and Mommy Dead and Dearest?
Yeah, I think.
Was that what it's called?
But that's the documentary. I don't think that's what the show was called.
Well, whatever the show was called.
And then she did Escape at Dannemora.
Which was awesome, man.
Yeah, but yeah, she's badass.
She's badass. In this one, she's more bad. She's very wafy in this one.
I wouldn't call her wafy.
You don't think so?
No.
Like, or just fine. I don't know. Like
she's
she's soft spoken, but
it's like a femme fatale, but also damsel in distress. Like she's very voluptuous. Like, and I mean, obviously, you see this. You're gonna see her body in this movie. Like you see her body, but like
you do see titties.
Yeah, like this was her. Like I would say in her like, I guess prime. As far as that goes, but
was she in any other David Lynch films? David Lynch has a thing with like blonde.
Well, yeah, because that's like the signature. Like if you think of like comics or like Dick Tracy or like
Yeah.
you know what I mean? It's either like it's that bombshell blonde like
Yeah. She's more, how can I say it? Let's see. She plays up the fatale, like she's more brooding on the Bill Pullman storyline and more fatale on the other storyline.
yeah,
On
Alice
the
is definitely the femme fatale
Yeah.
and Renee is maybe she's kind of damsel in distress, but
I don't
I
know.
don't know, I feel like it was that's just what they want you to think, but
Yeah.
I don't feel like that was the case either way.
Right? I don't
Hmm.
know.
And then
This
who's
movie's
next?
wild. Balthazar Getty as Pete Dayton. So Bill Pullman and Balthazar kind of play the same guy but do different guys, but it's like stemming out the same guy, I guess.
Yeah, like one turns into the other, vice versa. That's
One
just,
turns into the other, vice
I mean, that's
versa.
the only way you can describe it. Like, I mean, obviously, if you're listening to this episode, lots of fucking spoilers. So
Oh yeah.
watch the movie first, and then, you know what I mean? Like, listen to the episode because,
I also forgot to mention Patricia Arquette's like one of her crowning achievements in cinema was she was one of the Dream Warriors in
oh,
Nightmare
that's
on Elm
true.
Street 3. She was one of
Mm-hmm.
the Dream Warriors. She was like the final girl in that movie.
Mm-hmm.
Just want to bring that up because I brought the movie up before. One of the best movies. Balthazar Getty was also in Young Guns 2. He was in Natural Born Killers. Who was he in Natural Born Killers? Was he one of like the guards people? What? Or was he a prisoner?
Mm.
He was in Judge Dredd. He was his lead. He got the lead role in Lord of the Flies, the 1990 version of that. So he played, what's the kid's name? Ralph in Lord of the Flies.
Okay.
I've
I
seen
remember
pieces of that one.
seeing. I remember they made after they had us read the book, then they showed us the movie.
Okay.
Uh
I
huh.
remember
So I
seeing the
think it
old
was that
movie.
one.
I seen the old one.
Oh,
There's a
then
black and
maybe
white
that's.
one.
I can't remember which one it was.
Yeah. Balthazar Getty does great in this. He's not my favorite. I'm gonna say he's not my
Mm-hmm.
favorite actor in the movie, but he plays it like he's gullible. I think he's just. I feel like he's gullible.
I thought that originally too, but then when I looked back on it,
Mm-hmm.
like he's in his 20s, in his early 20s, so it's
Mm-hmm.
just like
Just
you know what
naive
I mean? Like he's just at this point he's trying to get through the day. He's people
and trying to
pleasing.
fuck.
And yeah, exactly. You have a
Mm-hmm.
hot woman like trying to hook up with you. Like that's you don't care about anything else. That's all he sees.
That's true. Yeah,
So that's why I figured I was like, nah, he's doing what a 20-year-old guy would
that's true.
do.
Balthazar Getty getting his fuck on. Robert Blake as the mystery man. He was fucking creepy in this one.
Super creepy. And
Yeah.
I don't know if it's just him in general creepy or the way they did the his costume and makeup, of course, for the movie. Like pale face, dark lips, dark eyes. And of course,
He
always
looks like a
wearing
ghost.
black, like,
Yeah.
yeah, like a ghost or like a phantom, like the Grim Reaper, I
Or
thought
a
at
weird junkie
points.
guy to me at
Uh-huh.
points.
And
Yeah.
how in that you said in an interview, he said that he didn't understand what it was, his character was, but he just was like, figured it was the devil. And I was like, yeah, like,
Yeah, he did play it up.
just
That's
super
in that
spooky
documentary. Yeah,
and,
he played it up like the devil.
mm-hmm.
Robert Blake has his own issues. He just to kind of go into him a little bit. He was. It was alleged that, or he was arrested for the murder of his then wife.
Alleged murder of his
Alleged
then wife.
murder,
Mm-hmm.
and they found her in his car with a gunshot wound to the head. He wasn't in the car at the time. He claimed that he went back into the restaurant that they were leaving to get his gun, which he left at the restaurant somehow. And he came back. Him and his bodyguard were both charged with with like conspiracy to murder this woman. It was a big trial and everything. It wasn't like massively televised from what I understand, but I know it was in the news. It was in the headlines at the time. His little picture popped up. He was acquitted, I believe, on the charges and such. because like the guns didn't match the remnants in her head and the wound
Yeah,
and
you said
everything.
that
The
wasn't
bullet
the
didn't match
same
the
gun as
gun,
his
but
gun.
at the
I don't
same
know.
point, could have been. I don't know. I don't know. But I'm not trying to speculate on him. Could it, like I see the angle of it could have been his bodyguard that kind of went and did it. You know what I
Mm.
mean? So either way, his his career was tarnished. His reputation was tarnished. He was a bigger actor. He played a lot of like cops and stuff back in like the 70s, 80s, and things like that. I
Mm.
think Beretta was the show that he was on.
Okay.
Beretta.
I never
Um,
watched that.
Never watched it either. But he kind of lost his mojo. His whole thing too was like he did have like a YouTube channel later on to try kind of like Bonnie Lee Bakley is the name of the lady that he was supposedly murdered.
Mm-hmm.
He had a YouTube channel in which he was like kind of catching up with his life and everything like that. He died of heart disease in LA, 2023, March 9th,
Mm.
2023. So very recently.
Wow.
Jimmy Kimmel was the host of the Academy Awards. He wasn't, so Blake wasn't included in the in memoriam section of the Academy Awards. And Jimmy Kimmel had this joke. He said, "Everybody, please get out your phones. It is time to vote, even at home. If you think Robert Blake should be included in the in memoriam montage, text, give me a Blake." That was his fucking.
Oh, I didn't even notice.
That was his joke. That was his joke. So I don't know how in good taste that was. I don't know what it was. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know. Maybe you should just like stop. Like, I don't. He was acquitted. I guess. They didn't find whatever evidence they didn't. I don't know. All I know is also Quentin Tarantino dedicated the novelization of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood to Robert Blake,
Mm.
saying that he's like more of like a victim of like the media, like ostracization
Mm.
and everything like that.
Yeah.
Which I don't know, man. Like it could be bad. Like the media could be bad. I get that. But then there's all these like all these men just trying to like the people that defend fucking like Bill Cosby and shit like that.
Mm.
So I don't know. I don't know. But otherwise, Robert Blake, a wild career, wild career, wild career. Um, I believe this was one of his last films, if not his last film,
Mm.
and he was real creepy in it. He leaned into it. Robert Loggia as
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Eddie / Dick Laurent. Mr. Eddie, he was actually supposed to play the or he wanted to play the Dennis Hopper part in
Mm-hmm.
Blue
Blue
Velvet,
Velvet.
and he was just kind of waiting for a part. So he jumped at the opportunity to get into Lost Highway. After he didn't get the part for Blue Velvet, though, I think he was like he did admit that he was talking shit about David Lynch and stuff after the fact. So
Mm-hmm.
I guess kind of David Lynch kind of held him to it, or I don't know.
I think it was he saw how angry or upset that he was
That's what it
over it,
was.
and then that's why he wanted him to play this character because
That's
he
right.
saw him all like
Because of the
"Rah!"
anger, and that's what it is. I mean, Mr. Eddie is a very angry person in this movie.
Mm-hmm. Hot temper.
Hot tempered,
Mm-hmm.
very
Short tempered.
very boiling. He always seems to be
Mm-hmm.
sizzling under the pot, and
Mm-hmm.
he can just boil over at any time. Natasha Gregson Wagner as Sheila, who was the girlfriend of
Mm-hmm.
Balthazar Getty, of Pete Dayton.
Mm-hmm.
She didn't have much to do.
I mean, I felt bad for her
You feel
character
bad for
just
her?
because she was like in love with him, but as soon as like Alice comes along, he like kind of
Yep,
puts her on the back burner.
yep. So
Mm-hmm.
poor Sheila. Poor Sheila. Da-na-na-na-na-na-na-na. Richard Pryor as Arnie. Richard Pryor's final acting role, I believe. He was kind of he wasn't in the best health at the moment either, and you could kind of see it. But he was still he was in the movie. David Lynch was excited to have him on. He was in awe of him being there, even if it was just for a small bit part.
Mm-hmm.
But David Lynch has has that gravitational pull, I guess, of just kind of different actors and stuff like that. So, he was there. Richard Pryor. Let's see who else. Let's see. Lisa Boyle as Marion. Which one was Marion? Was that Pete's mom? Marion?
Well, I don't know if it was. I mean, the parents weren't shown that much.
No.
The dad was more recognizable.
Gary Busey was Bill Dayton, Pete's dad. So Gary Busey comes in there looking all like Duke Nukem, like fucking leather jacket and Ray-Bans and shit, all crazy. Let's see who else. Giovanni Ribisi's in there. He's in there. If you blink, you'll miss him. If you blink, you'll miss him.
Snippet.
But he's in there. He's in there. So is fucking Henry Rollins. Henry Rollins is in there.
He's a guard in the prison.
He's a prison guard. I also saw that Scott Ian was a prisoner in there. Like in one of these little interviews, he was talking about how he was in the prison. So he was acting at Scott Ian from the band Anthrax. He's a fucking guitarist. Jack Nance from Eraserhead played Phil. I don't remember who Phil was specifically. Was he one of the detectives? I believe he might have been one of the detectives. Yeah, I believe so. But yeah, Henry Rollins, Jack Nance, Michael Massey as Andy. Let's see, Mink Stoll as the forewoman.
Oh, I didn't realize that was Mink Stoll.
Mink Stoll. Who's Mink Stoll? Where's Mink Stoll?
She played a lot of characters on a lot of what's the director? He did Pink Flamingos and Divine.
John Waters?
Yeah, John Waters. She was in a lot of John Waters movies.
Okay, cool. Cool for that. Cool. Also, Marilyn Manson and Twiggy Ramirez were porn actors in the porn scene. So also, there's this whole porn scene there. There's a whole shit. So Alice is also a porn actress. Mr. Eddie is involved in that, as is Andy, Michael Massey, Andy. Andy's like the dude that's Andy.
the friend, yeah.
The friend,
She met him at Moke's.
She met him at Moke's. She met Andy at Moke's. That's right. She met Andy at Moke's. Andy has a very gruesome death.
That was a crazy. Whoever did the makeup and stuff for that setup too, did a really good job because it didn't look cheesy. It's like if you were gonna have that happen to your head, like that's exactly how it would look.
He trips and his head makes it into the corner of a glass table, which just kind of rips into his head. Yep, it's all in there. So yeah, there was also an interview with David Lynch that I watched where somebody asked him, so how was it working with Marilyn Manson? Or they also asked specifically about like him as an artist, and David Lynch was like just dancing around a lot of stuff, but he's like, he's a very unique artist. He's a very masterful artist. I can appreciate his artistry. Like, I don't think he wanted to address who he was as a person, like fucking directly. So I don't know. It seemed that like Manson and Reznor, I don't think were on the best terms after everything happened. I think Manson felt like he was getting bigger than Reznor, and maybe Reznor was holding him back. But Manson's probably a prick about that shit. So whatever. Let's get into the soundtrack. Soundtrack opens. Well, first off, it reached number 7 on the Billboard 200. The soundtrack did. What's your relationship to the soundtrack? What do you remember about the soundtrack itself?
I remember hearing, knowing that David Bowie was on it, like, just made it so much cooler for me. But I remember Renee probably burned that soundtrack for me, and that's how I had it. And just hearing a bunch of cool songs that I hadn't heard from artists that I loved, like, it made me like the movie even more.
Okay, cool. I remember, for me, I believe the soundtrack was more ubiquitous than the movie was. I think I knew more about the soundtrack. I think it was one of those that I saw the Perfect Drug video, and I had seen the soundtrack at Best Buy, and it was just always something I saw, and I was like, that's gotta be hardcore. You know what I mean? Oh, that's gotta be crazy. I'm Deranged opens up the movie. I'm Deranged is the David Bowie song. I'm Deranged is a song from the David Bowie album Outside, which came out in 1995, which was produced by Brian Eno. So it's a whole Eno Bowie production. It doesn't open up the soundtrack on the title streaming version of it, and I think that's like a licensing issue because that'll happen sometimes when it'll happen when I look up a soundtrack and I could see all the songs there and they're listed, but one's like not you're not able to click on it or play through it. And this happens. So this is my if you can buy or if you have the physical version of the soundtrack, go for it. Or good on you if you have this physical version of the soundtrack, because it's possibly the most pure version of what the soundtrack is. But the movie opens up with I'm Deranged, and it's the whole highway sequence, and it brings you into the movie and you're being transported into this other world. Perfect opening. David Bowie. You sing it every time it pops up on the movie.
Yeah, I love it. It's David Bowie. He's fucking amazing.
I love it too.
You were expecting me to like sing a little jingle of the
I was
song,
expecting
huh?
something.
No, sorry.
Yeah. Goes into video drones questions with Trent Reznor featuring Peter Christopherson. Peter Christopherson himself is like an industrial musician. He did like Throbbing Gristle music. His band is called, or was called, well, he was in Throbbing Gristle. He was part of the British design agency Hypnosis, spelled Hipgnosis. Coil. He was in a band called Coil. Oh my gosh, I couldn't think of that. But I mentioned that because Trent Reznor had approached David Lynch to use a Coil song in the soundtrack, and David Lynch didn't want to use it for some reason. So that was like, so I guess like the thing that they used to make up with it was we're gonna make this music together. We're gonna make this so it's like a droning sound. It's more world building music. There's a lot of this within this album too. There's a lot of world building. Like it's like the score mixed with like more pop songs, more singles and such. So that leads into The Perfect Drug by 9 Inch Nails. What you think about this song?
It's a fun song. Like, I remember the first time I heard it, I was too young still or too naive still to understand the lyrics at the time.
Yeah.
But I just thought the song was fun, and I liked that it was like fast paced.
Yeah.
And it was like all of his songs are just still funky. Like you can always dance to it or move to it.
I was scared of the video, I remember. And I didn't know what it was, but it was exciting. And then just like, later on as you get into it, it's exactly like that. It's got a weird structure, but I love it. It kind of just like breaks the boundaries of what structure is. This song's very Atari Teenage Riot, and in a previous interview that I did see, he did mention that Atari Teenage Riot was one of his favorite bands at that moment in 1997 or 1990 something. So that was fucking sick. That was awesome. Love this song, Perfect Drug. It's the standout single from the soundtrack as well. It was like the one that roped everybody in, I believe. The video itself is really creepy. It's really weird. Lots of just like angular backgrounds and like a maze of sorts, right? Or how would you describe
I honestly don't like. If I have seen the video to this song, I don't remember what it looks like off the top of my head.
Oh, okay.
Because a lot of the stuff that came out during that time, I didn't have cable, so I wasn't able to readily watch stuff. I didn't have internet for a long time. Like, so there was a lot of in-between stuff that I never saw. I would get burned CDs. I would get like, you know what I mean? Secondhand stuff. So that's how I would find out about stuff.
Okay.
It wasn't like mainstream available for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll show you the video after this.
Mm-hmm.
Red Bats with Teeth, Angelo Badalamenti, Angelo Badalamenti, who also did like some of the music for Twin Peaks. He did the music for Blue Velvet as well. He has scenes in that documentary with David Lynch where they're going and they're recording certain things. He's playing like he's writing the compositions as he's going along. He's playing piano parts. They went to some studio, I believe, in East Germany, where they had an orchestra that kind of specializes in like the weird compositions and things like that. So they recorded it out there. Shows video of them out there. I believe Badalamenti and Reznor also did like some kind of like collaboration-y, because you can kind of hear sometimes like within the songs like a little bit of like a or you know like a little synthier sound type thing. But Badalamenti, composer, a great composer for the film in his own right, and you see a lot of him in that documentary. I'll post a link to that documentary in the show notes, so check out the show notes. The documentary itself is very good. The proof is in the picture, I believe it was called, or the picture is in something. You'll see what it's called in the show notes. Next song. You know, I should also mention, like, I might skip through some songs. So we got a couple of Angelo Badalamenti songs, a couple of compositions running through here. Like I said, can be a little bit more jazzy, can be a little bit more mood building, and the like lounge lizardy thing that David Lynch has built. So that's that. That's what that is there. Next, after that, Smashing Pumpkins.
This is probably my favorite song on the soundtrack, and also maybe my favorite Smashing Pumpkins song. But I remember the first time I heard it, I really, really loved it. It's a really good song. Like, I just like the sound of it.
Yeah, it's got that like harpsichordy piano playing in the background. It's got the electronic drums at the moment that Smashing Pumpkins were into, or that Billy Corgan was into. It sounds very Mechanical Animals era Marilyn Manson, which Billy Corgan produced. So that there's like a whole connection, a whole that there. Great song by Smashing Pumpkins. Smashing Pumpkins also been mentioned on this podcast a few times because of their involvement on soundtracks. They make some good music for soundtracks. This song popped up in the scene where Balthazar and Patricia Arquette are like dancing.
No, it was him and
Sheila. It was Pete and Sheila were dancing. That's right. And it's very like faint, but it's still prominent. Like you could still tell which one it is. So, I by the Smashing Pumpkins. Probably also my favorite song, maybe, on the soundtrack. Maybe. Next, we got Dub Driving, more Angelo. Then we got Barry Adamson with Mr. Eddie's theme. Mr. Eddie's themes are pretty, like, they're like, there's a couple of them, and they get more aggressive. And it is like it reflects him. Like, the theme itself reflects his aggression. And Barry Adamson himself was one of the founding members of the band called Magazine. You ever listen to Magazine?
I don't think so.
Like post-punky, New Yorky. He played bass, I believe, and he was like real like funky within that, which I don't know if I couldn't find any information on who picked the collaborators. But if it was like a Reznor, I don't know if it was like Trent Reznor per se. I mean, ultimately it had to be like David Lynch, right? So it's like, it's just crazy that he picked people like Trent Reznor, who's like doing industrial, which is kind of like the new wave at the moment or
Mm-hmm.
something, and then he picks like a post punk no wave person in like magazine, like, you know what I mean, and then Trent Reznor works with that one dude. So I don't know. It's like a very like influenced by post new wavy music, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
soundtrack. Um, the movie itself, it's a little, it is like industrial in its own right. Like to me, it kind of reads.
Towards yeah, like towards the end, like the middle and the end, I could feel more of that for sure.
hmm After that Mr. Eddie's theme, we got This Magic Moment
Hmm.
by Lou Reed. That dun, 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 dun,
Mm-hmm.
dun, 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 dun. What do you think about this song?
I mean, I just like how it's like Lou Reed's very like you just recognize his voice so easily, and
Mm-hmm.
it almost sounds like he's being campy, but he's not. I always feel that way, like in his songs. Like there's always a little bit of camp, but that's just his style. Like he's not trying to be campy.
Was that the scene where they see Alice for the first time? Is that the scene when she just like
I
comes
think
out the car?
I think
Yeah,
so.
right. And it's kind
Mm-hmm.
of slowed down. Yeah, yeah. Good song. Um, I like that. I like the guitar chunk. Like it's real heavy. It's real like in your face there. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, yeah. He does sound campy, like, but not on. But he's purposefully just like that. He's just
Mm-hmm.
like that. Except, did you ever listen to that album that he did with Metallica?
I don't think so.
Oh, it was bad. It was called Lulu.
Hmm.
Don't listen to it. You don't gotta listen to it. Maybe I'll
Mm-hmm.
show it to you. After that, we got the second Mr. Eddie's theme. Then we got Fred and Renee Make Love, which itself is fucking creepy. I mean, it's when they have sex, which is more of like a creepy, sad, like tension building scene than like a love scene
Mm-hmm.
in any way. Like it's got the sex there. It's like, they're naked. She's her voluptuous body's there. All this shit, but at the same point, like, so is it supposed to convey, like, does he finish early? Is that what happens, or?
Or I don't know if like that's what I couldn't grasp. Like it was either like because she's saying it's okay. So I don't know if it was like a quick one or if he didn't finish at all. Like if he just stopped. Because
Yeah.
she just, I remember her patting, like they really zoned in on her patting him on the
And
back.
that too, like, to me, like, the patting on the back was like an emasculation.
Yeah,
You know
like
what I
how
mean?
he just like he turned away from her and then like after he kind of like gained his composure, then he turns back. But it's like he was, you could tell he was a little embarrassed, but
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't tell if it was for sure because he finished too quick or because he couldn't.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But I feel like it was also like this whole time, like he's been paranoid and like he's wondering what she's up to. And like, I feel like it was like one of those, he's trying to gain control of the situation, but it just didn't work out in his favor
Mm-hmm.
anyway.
Yeah, and then after they fuck, he describes that fucking nightmare of his, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
when he describes his nightmare,
Mm-hmm.
which we act like which we see him like act out later on in the movie, but it's like him walking through the hallway, and then she's there asleep, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the hallway's creepy, and he can't even really describe what's happening in the nightmare either, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like this movie, like, to me, the best movies are, I like fever dream type movies, and this one's very much a fever
Mm-hmm.
dream, in that, like, you don't know when you're awake, you don't know when the fuck you're asleep,
Mm-hmm.
you don't know what
And you
reality
could
you're
just
in.
assume there's lots of things that you could assume about situations.
And like, it is assumed in the situation, and it's just assumed that this is the reality of the situation. They don't address it. They don't address, well, actually, they do address it in several situations, or like in a couple of situations, like when Bill Pullman turns into Balthazar Getty, and Balthazar Getty's in the prison rather than Bill Pullman being in the prison. Like, it breaks their reality too. Like, it's weird. Like, they're like, oh shit, oh, what the
Mm-hmm.
hell's
Like
going
this
on?
is
Like,
not the guy.
this isn't the guy that we put in last night. Um, so it's like they're on board with what's going on, but then they're not part of the reality. But then they are. Yeah, it's weird. It's such a weird movie. Apple of Sodom by Marilyn Manson. A pretty heavy song, pretty deep song. Do you remember this song?
This is the song that's playing during the porn scene, right? Or when does this song play?
This song actually plays. Let me check my notes. I did not take down when this played. It played in another darker scene. I want to say it was also within his nightmare. After that, we got Insensates. Insensates by Antonio Carlos Jobim. Like a more of like a chiller bossa nova type song. There's a lot of these going on throughout the movie. There's several scenes in which this music's just kind of playing. It's like these are musics that just kind of like carry the scenes throughout. Like there's like it's a whole thing with David Lynch, just like the
Mm-hmm.
jazzier music. So this bossa nova y song by Antonio Carlos Jobim sits perfectly within what he does. Then there's that Something Wicked This Way Comes by Barry Adamson. It's another one of those, kind of fills in the spot. The song that you were talking about is I Put a Spell on You.
Okay, okay, okay.
I put a spell on you. And that's playing when she's getting naked for Mr. Eddie. That's what
That's
that
when it
is.
is.
That's what that
Okay.
is. That's a very horrifying scene because Patricia Arquette has a gun pointed at her head. She has to strip from Mr. Eddie, who just looks disgusted as she's walking inside the whatever office or whatever thing he's doing.
Mm-hmm.
She's surrounded by a bunch of dudes. What you feel about that scene?
Well, that one, yeah, it's a very uncomfortable scene. It's very like she's very vulnerable. But like towards the end of the scene, it's like she takes control of the situation and doesn't, um, like you can kind of see like a flip, like where she's no longer the victim and she's like, okay, like I'm just gonna do this. Like that was a vibe I kind of got from it, but I know in the documentary of how she mentioned like David Lynch is very good at making you feel comfortable. Like he's not trying to make you uncomfortable. Like he makes you feel very comfortable to do something uncomfortable. But she said she still went and cried like after the fact, like later. You know what I mean? So I'm like,
Yeah,
that's yeah, like you know what I mean. You're
yeah.
playing a character, and when something awful's happening, like you still feel it.
That too. I was watching that documentary and her talking about that, and I was like, is she saying that David Lynch is cool, or is she just trying to be like, yeah, David Lynch is cool, but like, did she have a worse part during that
I think it
filming
was
than she
hard for
put
her to
on?
play. Like, I think she had a hard
Okay.
time playing that character, and just because there was so much nudity and so much like sexualization.
Yeah.
But I felt like she was being genuine when she was saying that he does, like, it was for the situation that it is, like, he does, like, let you feel as comfortable as you possibly can, I guess.
I'm with that. I'm with
Mm-hmm.
that. Very uncomfortable scene. It's crazy because it's you see, how can I say it? I believe it's meant so that you could see like you could have some sympathy for who she is, and you could,
Mm-hmm.
and it does like kind of flip on you as you see her in the porn film. And then when you see her coming down the stairs after Baltasar Getty attacks Andy, and knocks him out unconscious, quote unquote, maybe at that moment, you see that she makes that turn.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm getting to that scene because so the scene in which Baltasar comes into the room and he sees the porno for the first time with her. It's like projected onto the wall. Her in a black and white, pretty artistic porn film. I do have to say so. Like that's very artistic. Like what the fuck? Like no,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. That's just crazy. But she's there. She's in it. She's having sex. Like that's what people in porn do. And he's pretty disgusted. And we hear that Rammstein song. We
Mm-hmm.
hear German chanting, speaking, like the introduction to the song. It's real heavy. Rammstein's Rammstein.
It's a good song for the scene because, I mean, if you don't know German, you know what I mean? Like, it's just, it sounds very rough and aggressive, and um, it's like a perfect song for the scene.
It's like the theme to the porn scene.
Yeah.
It's like the theme to the porn house.
Mm-hmm.
It is like the theme there because we do see a different scene there in which she's with Dick Laurent and like he's just aggressively just making out with her. What was it, Alice or was it Renee at that scene?
See that too, was it? Because I'm trying to think of if she
I
had
think it was
blonde hair or
Renee.
was brunette hair.
I think it was Renee. But Andy's there too. Andy's the porn guy. Obviously, he's like the guy, and it's also implied that she's also sleeping with Andy, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
that's what the implication is of the whole movie. So Rammstein was like the theme of that whole scene. They also got another song on here called "Heirat mich," which is in there also. And also like that Rammstein. It's also like the scene when which he's walking when which Balthazar Getty is walking down that hallway where
Mm-hmm.
he goes into that door which he sees another version of Patricia Arquette getting fucked, and she's just like taunting him while she's doing it also.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so there's that. This Rammstein song was like the first, like the song that brought Rammstein to the U.S. and you could kind of credit David Lynch for
Mm.
them being here. I saw a couple in like this whole little thing on it. So yeah, he brought them and they became
That's pretty
popular
cool.
after. That's pretty cool, huh? That's
Mm-hmm.
pretty cool. So I already said that. We got some more Barry Adams stuff, Barry Adamson stuff in there. We got some more Angelo stuff in there as well. Hollywood Sunset is the Barry Adamson song. There's Fats Revisited, Fred's World, by Angelo. More continuations on like themes presented in the movies. More kind of sparse but tense and dissonant songs or compositions. I would say like not much songs, more like suites and flows of atmosphere. I guess you could say, and with a little bit of jazziness and like lounge lizardy stuff added in there. It's a David Lynch touch. Also, David Lynch did build like the furniture in the Madison household.
Mm-hmm.
He's known to do that so that things could be so that they do have that hand like that texture to it, like that hand touched film texture. This movie doesn't have like tons of like graphics or anything for a horror film. The stuff that it does, like the transformation scenes, are pretty crazy. Like the super flashing lights.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like the transformation themes.
Yeah, that stuff is like heavier music, like the Rammstein stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Then we finished this off with Trent Reznor does Diver Down, an instrumental piece. I mean, Trent Reznor's just always kind of funky. It's not the funkiest, but it's there. But you could also see like but it's got like a lighter touch. You could see where he's going with like the Ghosts project and things like that. Like as he's moving forward into the things he does, and then it rounds out with a reprise of I'm Deranged. That's how the film goes out.
Mm-hmm.
Bill Pullman is driving down the road, going crazy, changing or morphing into Balthazar, but he just looks crazy in the
Mm-hmm.
movie, and
He's deranged.
he's deranged. He's deranged. I mean, what other scenes are there? There's the whole cabin thing. There's like the cabin reference that they have to keep
Yeah,
going
where they
back
just they
to,
kept showing, they would randomly flash to it and it would be full
like
of smoke and on fire,
and a
and it would
reverse
go reverse
explosion,
backwards.
and then Robert Blake would come out of
Hmm.
it. The mystery
And then the
man.
whole Mobius strip, how you said, because it goes back to where it's at the beginning. He transforms back again, and he goes back to the apartment, and he rings the doorbell, and he says Dick Laurent is dead, and it was
because
himself.
he
Like,
killed Dick Laurent.
mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, he kills Dick Laurent. It's a weird movie. It's a weird movie.
It's
Like
definitely a movie like that you can see multiple
you can
times.
see
Like you
multiple
can see it
times.
multiple times and get a different grasp from it. Make it of it what you will.
Yeah, there's a lot of film noir scenes, like when they're on the phone, and you just see like Patricia Arquette's lips lit up in like in the shadows, and she's
Mm-hmm.
speaking really quietly. That's another thing too that David Lynch does with the sound, like with their voices, and everybody has like a distinct voice. And then he does like a thing with like it's like a David Lynch whispering thing.
Or he has it like long, uncomfortable pauses where there shouldn't be.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're having a conversation and it kind of just halts at awkward times, like
Mm-hmm.
to
The
where you're just
pacing.
kind of, yeah, the pacing is always like that, where
It
it's unnerving all the time.
it's
You're like
un.
waiting for something to happen.
I was gonna say this, like it's unnerving, but is it unnatural? That like to me, seeing more of his movies now, and as I get into like art film and shit like that, his films definitely have a pace. But also, is it more like I would kind of describe it as like people are kind of thinking about what they're gonna say, you
Hmm.
know?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering if that's what it is, but they do have that weird David Lynch pace.
Mm-hmm.
I guess everybody kind of gets what they deserve in this movie in a way, but it's not, would you say that Bill Pullman and Balthazar are like the protagonists? Like, would you say that they're the heroes of the movie per se?
I mean, yeah, I guess kind of because like the whole reason she lures Balthazar in is to help her kill. I feel like that was like what had happened was they wrangled her into this porn business and
Uh
like she
huh.
just wanted nothing. She didn't want to do it anymore. And like she wrangled him in to kind of help her like
Get
get rid of
away.
them.
Yeah.
And so like yeah, like he ends up helping her kill, but it's like is she in turn now a bad person because she had him she kind of like lied to him and you know what I
Hmm.
mean? So
But then, and then, yeah, and then it just goes back to Renee, and then she is the one that is cheating with Mr. Eddie or Dick Laurent,
mhm.
and then it seems like the timelines just they just merge in a really fucked up way. I don't.
Yeah.
It's just really it's a weird one. It's got a lot to pick through. Filming's beautiful. Framing is awesome. Everybody is where they need to be. That for as confusing as it is, and as staggered as his like speeches and as
It's still easy to
it's
watch.
still easy to watch,
Like
and
it's still fun to watch because you're just the whole time you're kind of like, wait, what?
it's a very tight movie. There's not a
Mm-hmm.
lot of fluff in it. There's not a
Mm-hmm.
lot of like, oh, this doesn't make like
They're
this scene
just
didn't need to
cuts. Like
happen.
it always
Yeah.
cuts to something else. It's like, well, now
Hmm.
this is happening and now this is happening.
It's like, yeah, it's like it's a whole little tale. You see Mr. Eddie's like rage pretty heavy. Everybody is at a 10.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody can go from 0 to 10 like that. Like even the dude that gets his ass kicked by Mr. Eddie, like when he's
Yeah.
he's just over the top crying.
Mm-hmm.
Another David Lynch thing, like I don't think he likes middle ground. I think he likes if you're gonna go
If you're
big,
gonna go there, like fucking
you're
go
gonna
there.
go fucking big. If any of you have seen Twin Peaks, you'll know what I'm saying. As like with all the screams and stuff like that. Even in Eraserhead, the everybody's kind of like an exaggerated version of who they are supposed to be in that film.
Mm-hmm.
I think we are here at the end of our Lost Highway episode. The film wasn't a big box office hit, but it's become a cult hit. It's got a fucking Criterion version out there. It's got a lot of documentation on it. It made an impact in the canon of art film in general, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And it does, I think, have a lot to owe, like to the popularity of it. I believe has a lot to owe to the soundtrack and the perfect, for me, the perfect drug in particular, because it was more of a hit. It was
Mm-hmm.
like it was the song. It was played a lot.
Mm-hmm.
It brought a lot of attention to what was going on there, and you got to give credit to Trent Reznor where it's due. Favorite song still Smashing Pumpkins song.
Yeah, it's a good song.
Um, Casey, do you have anything to plug?
I don't know.
Follow Casey at Casey is Harry. Her salon,
Casey is Harry Salon.
Casey is Harry Salon. You can find me at _JJCABALLERO on Instagram. Also on Letterboxd. I'm on Threads. I don't do much threading. I don't know if anybody that does do much threading. Not on like Facebook or anything anymore. Check me out on YouTube, www.jjcavallero.com. Thank you very much to TPG Radio for always letting us do what we want to do. Thank you for jumping in and joining us on this exploration of the movie music of Trent Reznor, and by extension his collaborators, and we're going through some stuff. Next episode we'll talk about Social Network. That's the next film in his canon of the movies that he's worked on in his movie music, and more like what he does from now on. Like the Social Network's kind of the transition to where he does like kind of more scoring than like editing or collaging or producing. It's more that. You'll see what we're talking about in that next episode. Thank you very much. tpgradio.com. You can find us at TPG Radio on all the social networks. And social networks. You see what I did there? Yeah.
And if you watch the movie and like, just let us know in the comments, or if there's other movies you want to talk about or want us to
reach out to us.
Let us know.
Let us know. Rate, review, let people know what you think about the podcast. Share it with other people. Share it wherever you can. Rate and review, because that helps us in the algorithm and stuff. So do all that wherever you're listening to us. Thank you very much. This has been Mono Stereo Video. We'll listen to you later.
Bye, guys.